everyone, Minded's here. Everyone loves EA, right? Anyway, this trilogy is something that I hold very dearly, yet I've never really gotten to talk about it that much on the channel. With a new entry currently still in the works, I decided now is the perfect time to revisit this masterclass of a trilogy, Skate. I hope you all enjoy this video, and let's jump straight into this. The Skate series was developed by EA Black Box, with 3 main games and a spin-off we're not going over. Being released from 2007 to 2010, Black Box would then later shut down in 2013, but 7 years later, a new game was announced with the development team full circle, which includes the original trilogy's creators. Across the 3 games, you're a skateboarder trying to gain fame by doing videos, photo shoots, competitions, and other things. You eventually reach this goal by accomplishing a certain amount of tasks and completing the big final mission of the game. The best part of this game is the controls beyond a shadow of a doubt. These games invented the flick it system, where most tricks are done based on how you move the right joystick. This control scheme is incredibly intuitive and also easy to learn. While all 3 games follow the same formula, how each game uses this formula evolves across the series. So let's first talk about 2007's Skate. Now with the whole series, there's a free play mode and a story mode. At the start, your character is hit by a bus while skateboarding. After leaving the hospital, you, with your cameraman friend Rita, go back out to continue trying to make a name for yourself. During the game, you meet multiple original game characters, as well as real-life skateboarders, both of which you can play as during free play mode after completing certain challenges. While the story is pretty simplistic, it works for the game, and it's clearly not meant to be the selling point. Plus, this game captures the fun, cool, edgy 90s to 2000s skateboard vibe perfectly. Now, I want to delve more into the mechanics, because it will be important to have a frame of reference to see what later games improve on. The options for tricks feel limited in comparison to Skate 3, which I played first, but there's still a sizable amount of things you can do in this game. There's a wide list of flips, grab tricks, and other minor moves that help to make this game not feel repetitive. Although, I do of course have to mention the one major thing that does make this game feel a bit difficult to come back to, and that's the fact that you cannot get off of your skateboard. This doesn't ruin the game or anything, but it can make setting up tricks harder to do, but the game does help make things easier by providing a feature called a session marker, where you can save an area and be teleported back in case you mess up or want to redo a trick. Now outside of the controls, the most important part of a good skateboarding game is the map, and they managed to hit it out of the park with San Vanalona. A combination of San Francisco, Vancouver, and Barcelona apparently consists of 4 main areas. Those are suburbs, the res, downtown, and old town. All these areas have overall a distinct feeling from each other, but they still connect with each other very nicely. There are tons of great spots across the map that have an incredible amount of replay value. There's the school, the hospital, all the different winding street roads, and many other locations. The most notable spots are the X Games and Danny Way's Mega Park, where you can get the craziest tricks in the game. One thing I will say is that the controls feel very grounded most of the time. You have to think about the tricks you do if you actually want them to work, and you will be punished for moving around like a maniac in most areas. Speaking of punishment, if you pick it in the settings or in story mode, there will be certain areas that are protected by security. This would be aggravating if you couldn't turn it off, but you can, so it helps to add a little bit more of a fun challenge to certain areas across the map. Overall, this is a solid start to this series that feels completely different from many of the skateboarding games that came prior. Skate 1 is a strong base for a franchise, and you can see where they can innovate and evolve the formula. And evolve, they certainly did. Considered the best entry in the entire series by many EA Skate fans, here is 2009's Skate 2. Okay, I have to come clean. I have not played Skate 2. I've played 1 and 3 thanks to Xbox backwards compatibility, but Skate 2 wasn't yet available when I played through these games. While I haven't played the game, I know most of what happens and what mechanics are introduced, so I can give a fairly good rundown. Skate 2 takes place years after the original game, where within that time frame there was a massive earthquake in San Vanalona that caused a ton of damage to the city. A huge corporation named Mongo Corp then suddenly showed up to help fix the city, but Mongo Corp also began cracking down on skateboarding, putting anti-skating equipment and more security across San Van, which, by the way, is now known as New San Van. They also arrested tons of famous skaters, including your character, so you're not just skating to try and reclaim the fame you lost, but you're also trying to revive the skating scene itself. While the concept is more unique, this game isn't some storytelling marvel or anything, but once again, the plot really helps when it comes to building the world of the game. In regards to the world, while you still are in the same city, it definitely isn't the same place since the last time our player character was around. The same districts from Skate 1 are back, but the changes in use Sandvan vary wildly from area to area. Some are the classic locations from the original game that you remember, and others seem completely unrecognizable. It's similar to Tears of the Kingdom in a way, where they managed to create an entirely new experience with the same fundamental map as before. With the removal of some iconic areas in the game, there are of course some fantastic new additions to the map that take their place. One thing I noticed is that there seems to be more big spots in the game where you can get huge tricks and massive airtime, but overall, the game still tends to be more on the side of realism. One thing that I've forgotten to mention is just how much the lighting in these two entries adds to the feel of the game. Despite these first two games being over 15 years old at this point, I continue to find these games visually pleasing to look at. With Skate 2 being an evolution of the original game, there are a ton more tricks that you can do. There are new moves in most of the skating categories, and I mean a lot of new moves. And there's also plants where you can jump while on your board. With this game's improvements, there are two massive main features to discuss. First is that you can now get off your board and walk around the map. This is obviously a welcome addition, and they inevitably had to add this if they plan on continuing the series. The second is the Hall of Meat. It's a mode where the game actively encourages you to injure your character as much as possible with different methods depending on the challenge. While it is a bit more rudimentary in Skate 2, the ragdoll physics are pretty funny across this series, and the hilarity you get yourself into evolves and just becomes better and better. Skate 2 takes everything about Skate 1 and then dials it up to 11. Skate 2 feels like a blend of the original title and the next game I'll be talking about, while also having its own unique aspects that might even make it better than the game surrounding it. It's impressive how Black Box improved on the original Skate in so many ways in just 2 years. But wait a minute, I said this trilogy came out from 2007 to 2010. If this game was made in the span of 2 years, that means 2010 Skate 3 was made in, for all intents and purposes, this should not be a good game. Skate 3 was released only 1 year after Skate 2. The visuals are nearly unrecognizable compared to the previous games, and there are enough glitches here to make you wonder if they released an early version of the game on accident. But the game is just so fun. Everything I just described doesn't even feel like a downside, but rather a benefit to the game. I know it sounds weird, but let me explain. The story is once again not very deep. Your character moves to Port Carverton to compete, and it ends up going horribly. After this, your goal is slightly different. While you are competing in the similar missions you're used to, you're doing it intending to create a skateboarding media empire by having multiple skateboarders be part of your team and by selling skateboards of your brand. One small thing I want to note is I love the recurring characters that appear throughout these games, even if they don't add that much overall. It just goes to show that Black Box puts a lot of care into these games and enjoyed making them with its attention to detail. Port Carverton is completely separate from San Van, and while I absolutely love a lot of this map, I have to highlight one major complaint. Unlike Skate 1 and 2, the Skate 3 map is divided into 3 districts instead of being connected. It's honestly a shame because it would be really cool to see how they would connect, and I feel that it probably didn't happen due to time constraints. But there are still some really remarkable areas across the map. There's the iconic Carverton Quarry, Spillway entrance, Super Ultra Mega Park, and the Observatory, just to name a few. Basically, throw away the last 2 games I talked about, because Skate 3 goes in the complete opposite direction in realism. Multiple areas allow for huge over-the-top tricks, or just straight up dying, and the glitches that you can manipulate in this game somehow make these moments even crazier. Speaking of death, Hall of Meat is back, and it's absolutely better than ever, as the absurdity of your failures and also the goofiness of the ragdoll physics is shifted into overdrive. This game really does feel like a completely different series in comparison to the last 2 games. And with how good Skate 2 was, this might honestly have been the best move. It really allowed the developers to not have to worry about surpassing the previous game, but creating something fun in its own right. It almost sounds like I'm done talking about this game, but I still got more to go through. I haven't mentioned the soundtrack of these games, and that's mainly because Skate 3's soundtrack is an absolute work of art. All the songs here, while I don't listen to them outside the game or anything, I instantly remember these songs the second I boot the game up again. The song choices here really make you feel like you're in student loan debt. There are a lot more tricks added to this game, and when playing in easy mode, you can do some wild stuff. There are actually some extra locations you can skate in besides the main map. There are specific parts that exist for certain challenges, there's some DLC, one of which is a remade version of part of San Van, and there are lastly custom parks that are made by either yourself or other players. It makes sense since it's the most recent, but this is probably the most replayable skate game with how many different places you can skate in. Or you can just play like me and start throwing your skateboard at people in the streets. Skate has been a franchise I've adored for a long time. Even before I played Skate 3 and later on Skate 1, I watched tons of videos on the series. This is definitely my favorite sports-related game series because you can really tell that thought and care was put into each of these game entries, regardless of any time constraints. I hope that the new Skate game, which was announced 5 years ago and is apparently being released in early access this year, turns out to be great. I mean, of course, everyone wants a series that they enjoy to do well and hopefully continue. I've seen some good things about the game, but I've also seen some worrying developments. But as long as the controls, the music, and the world are fantastic, I think the game will do just fine. So what I really mean is, things will be good as long as the game is Skate. I hope y'all enjoyed today's video. If you did, check out some other videos, and if you really did, consider subscribing so that you know when future content comes out. That's gonna be it for now, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care!